YouTube? This is my review of the Cold Steel Finn Wolf Puko folder. Now, in just the last video I did that was short and had nothing on it, all you saw were my hands wiggling around talking about my disappointment with the Ka-Bar Mule and how the Recon 1 did not fit my needs as a tool. This absolutely does. This knife is fantastic. It is a 3.5 inch, highly polished, full Scandi grind. Now what that means is typically on knives like with saber grinds or many other knife styles, you'll have a ground bevel, and then there will be a secondary bevel close to the edge that goes all the way down to the edge. A Scandinavian grind is a single bevel that goes all the way down to the edge. This does that. It has, I forgot the name, these plasticky kind of handles. It has this sort of cheap appearance, but you know, in all honesty, after use and putting it through some rigors, I'm not disappointed in this handle, in the material, in the look of it, in the ergonomics of it. And you can see how it fits inside of my hand. I wear a large or extra large size gloves, and it's quite comfortable. The locking mechanism is the Cold Steel Triad lock, which after having owned a couple Cold Steel folders, this one and the Recon 1, I have to say this is the greatest locking mechanism found on a folder, and I kind of wish Cold Steel had a significantly different line of folders that were more tool or survival oriented, just so I could have this extremely awesome lock on my knives. You know, and so with that, it's pretty clear when you think about the philosophy of use with a knife. When Cold Steel designs their knives, and it's pretty obvious on nearly all of their videos that they put online and all of their descriptions, they're typically thinking about weaponry. I'm not a fan of that outlook. I think you know, I don't want to say that folding knives as weapons should not be available for people that want them. I don't like to carry a knife that's a weapon. I like to carry a knife that's a tool, that cuts things I need cut, that slices things I need sliced, that will be available for a variety of tasks. And this is one of the few from Cold Steel that fits that description. This is a tool. This is an outdoor design. The Puko folding knife is a typical Scandinavian, Northern European utility knife. And if you get into survival or bushcraft, you'll find that nearly all of the top bushcraft knives are Scandinavian grinds and have similar shapes and designs. This is one of the few folding Puko style knives out there. Spyderco makes one, and Cold Steel makes one. There's a Benchmade. Spyderco or Benchmade, I forget. That knife, super expensive. This knife, about 35 bucks on eBay or Amazon. So right there comes at a huge value. Very small, very light, very easy to carry, very cheap, and it frankly has a value and robustness above kind of what you're paying for as far as I'm concerned. Now I'd like to address, there's a number of reviews I've seen on the internet, both on the forums and on video, where some people have experienced edge folding over when given light use. Now with that first one, we're talking about wood carving and things like that. I have not personally experienced that with my Finn Wolf. This thing has actually remained astonishingly sharp for me so far, and I've put it through some minor rigors, cutting, carving, boxes, wood, sticks, hardwood, softwood, things like that, and it's held up perfectly fine, and I can't say I have any complaints with regards to that. There is one other review that I noticed where the reviewer used this to baton through a 2x4, and he ended up with a sizable ding in the, you know, a good chunk pounded through in the middle of the blade. And whether or not this reviewer was doing that with the intent and the hope that it would survive and be beautiful like a Mora or a Tops Brothers of Bushcraft knife? I don't know. At the very least, the information we were able to gain from that is that this knife is not going to be an extremely heavy abuse knife. Now, if you're getting a 3.5-inch folding pocket knife, chances are you probably don't intend to use it as a heavy abuse knife for bushcraft or something along those lines. But this may not stand up to that. I don't personally intend to put it through those rigors. I have knives for that. I have a 10-inch kukri that I use for shelter building and batoning and wood milling and manufacturing around camp. I also have a Mora companion heavy-duty knife that is also great for those things. Higher carbon steels on both, and both of them intended for significantly higher abuse than I think this knife was. If you read the description, this knife is intended to be an everyday carry, go-to kind of knife for simple everyday tasks, and I think it fills that role perfectly well. This blade is exactly as intended. So if you want a folding knife that's going to stand up to heavier bushcraft rigors, I would not recommend this one. I would think, I said before, the Cold Steel Recon 1, I didn't keep it or like it because it didn't fit within my own particular philosophies of use, but if you had a clip point or a spear point Recon 1, you would have a knife that I think would stand up to intense rigors in a bushcraft or fieldcraft or survival setting. This guy, it'll get the job done. It'll save your life in a pinch, I'm sure, but for the most part, this is an everyday carry tool. The one thing that I've struggled with personally on this knife is frankly my own problem, and I've cut myself twice on this sucker. The first was, I don't know if you can tell there on my thumb, it's a little out of focus. The first was when opening, it's a bit stiff, and so you give it a flick and a flick there. Well, one of the times I was opening it, I decided to just push. And here you can see this is where I found my hand. I wasn't looking at it, I wasn't watching, and I pushed my thumb right onto the blade and gave myself a good slice. Lesson learned, that was foolish. Then the other time I had some gunk and I was cleaning it off like this and gave it a little push and slide and I slipped my finger there. This knife is astonishingly sharp right out of the box. That is typical of all cold steel knives, no exception here. And one of the things about the Scandi grind is it does tend to bite and dig faster than a lot of your other grinds. That's what happened on my flesh. That's what happens with everything I've cut: boxes, wood, tape, food, all of it. This thing digs faster, bites harder, and it does take a little getting used to if you're not used to Scandi grinds. I have just a little bit of experience since I've started delving into bushcraft using the Mora and this guy. The Scandi grind is a bit different. You need to adjust how you approach cutting when you're using this style of knife. Now going back to food, with cutting with food, because of the way this blade is set up, it goes straight into the full thickness of the blade, a third to half of the way through. This does struggle with food prep because it's not quite as slim. It does the job, but it's maybe not the most ideal thing in the world. That's okay. I don't mind myself. Again, not necessarily predominantly a food prep knife. This is just kind of a utilitarian folder. And it's honest to God replaced my normal EDC, which has been a Kershaw Needs Work. And this is what I carry now. This is my favorite. I love it. There you go. So, the Pat Boughton recommendation here for any of you watching this video is the Cold Steel Finn Wolf recommended for an everyday carry utilitarian knife blade with a slight focus on wood carving. This guy is it. Do not buy this expecting an indestructible bushcraft knife. You're not going to get it. And one of the things, I know it sounded like I was done, but I'm not. Part of that comes down to the type of steel we're talking about. One of the things that I think is different is this is AUS 8A steel, and when you have Moras or other bushcraft dedicated knives, they're harder steels, 1095s, D2, things like that, and they're designed to stand up to exceedingly tough abuse. And the Finn-Wolf here is a different kind of steel. It is a little cheaper. It is a little softer, which is exactly why I think the fellow with the 2x4 on the knife forum found himself with a totally thrashed blade, and he was expecting something beyond what this knife was meant for. Now maybe he was just trying to show off what it was capable of, and he wasn't expecting anything at all. I don't know his intent, but it did show us that this knife is not going to cut down trees and make your fire kindling and come out the other side looking like a prince. But good for food prep, feather sticking, small carving tasks, making spoons or tent stakes or things like that. I think you'll be perfectly satisfied with this knife. And general EDC carrying tasks, fantastic. And one of the other things I enjoy thoroughly about the Scandi Grind is the ease with which you can sharpen them, because when it comes to sharpening, you have just this single large bevel that you can lay down on your stone or your rod or whatever you sharpen with, and it makes it very easy. One more thing, when it comes to sharpening, the thumb stud is removable. You're going to want to remove it to be able to fulfill getting your angle on this back portion of the blade. You'll struggle with it otherwise because this thumb stud gets in the way. But there you go, fantastic knife. I love it. I think you will all love it, so long as you keep in mind that this is, a $35 to $45 knife. This is not necessarily intended to be a backcountry single carry blade. It'll get these things done if you have to, if there's no other option, but there's better options out there than this by far for that task. Thanks for taking a look, and we'll see you guys later.